Calling No Man's Sky a disappointment is stating the obvious. The game itself wasn't exactly stellar, but the way it was communicated made it seem like a revolution in gaming, which only exemplified the disappointment that is being felt even by those who don't own the game. Of course, there are many factors that went into why this occurred, and the impact of some, such as the flooding of Hello Games a few years back, haven't been properly quantified. When you look at No Man's Sky, it's probably fair to say that poor communication was the real killer. That's awfully vague though, so what did Hello Games do wrong? No Man's Sky has been the centre of hype for years amongst PS4 owners and PC gamers alike. Hello Games did not sell a game, they sold a vision. The idea of a vast procedurally generated universe lingered in the back of gamers' minds each time E3 came around. And any slither of news demanded intense hype from its fanbase. Starting too early with the marketing process resulted in fans having unrealistic expectations of the release. John Blow's last title, The Witness, suffered a similar fate. The runaway success of Braid not only carried The Witness from early conception to finished product, but it also kept it in the minds of many for 7 years. 7 years of expecting another mind-blowing adventure, when in reality The Witness was but a glorified Bioshock hacking minigame with impressive visuals. It's not like anyone has forgotten about Braid since its time in the spotlight in 2008. So why did the hype process start so early for The Witness? One of the main criticisms for No Man's Sky brings back memories of Skyrim's release. Namely, the phrase, wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. Both games suffered an oversharing of complex systems that were never implemented into the final product. The most notorious aspect of No Man's Sky is its multiplayer, or lack thereof. A feature frequently touted by Sean Murray, allowing for rare and exciting exchanges with another player across the game's servers, was completely absent when two players met up on launch day, or rather, they didn't. They were in the exact same location, live streaming simultaneously, and did not see each other. In fact, the time of day in the game was different for both players. If that was not enough evidence, the limited edition print of No Man's Sky has a sticker over the PEGI rating, concealing the online play icon that was initially displayed. It definitely did not help matters much when Murray danced around the issue of multiplayer on launch day, neither confirming nor denying it. This is the one that has people riled up, because at face value it seems malicious, tricking people into buying a false product. However, the issue is a lot more complicated than that. Two case studies. The first, Todd Howard, one of the few people on the planet with a theme song, that being Little Lies.
Our new rating AI system. It allows NPCs to have full 24/7 schedules. All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
His name carries a lot of weight, but in recent years it has been for the wrong reasons. Despite this, the games he works on at Bethesda still see immense hype before release, followed by disappointment because, in fact, the game didn't have infinite quests. Some people are more eager to buy into hype than reality, but, to be fair, most people are now disillusioned to Todd Howard's convincing concepts. In this example, Todd Howard is the misleading sort, the one to promise features that the dev team most likely never intended to be present upon release. Another famous example is Peter Molyneux, a man who bigs his games up as much as he can before release, promising ambitious features that he realistically shouldn't be promising. Really, how important would Goring an Acorn have been in the original Fable? It would never have been a game changer, but people remember that above all of the game's merits. Peter Molyneux does get a bad rap from fans of his games, and despite his clear passion for the games he works on, he can often be a detriment to the final product. Even those sympathetic to his cause look down on the neglect of the Curiosity winner, who was promised a role in her next game Goddess as well as a small cut of the profit. They have received neither. This is why the issue is so complicated. Did Hello Games intentionally lie about multiplayer, factions and other features to boost sales? Or did they just make the mistake of promising what wasn't set in stone? Well, to be honest, that's not what matters. What matters is that consumers were misled. Nobody seems eager to change this, however. Ubisoft is notorious for deceiving fans with inaccurate demos that have features not present in the final game, as well as boasting more impressive visuals. Even CD Projekt Red, a company known for being consumer-friendly, is guilty of visual downgrades for The Witcher 3. Easily the worst offender is Mighty No. 9. The developers were so eager to make money far above their initial goal that they made big promises they would never fulfill. Turns out they couldn't even manage what they initially promised, as the game turned out to be a complete flop. Not only that, but it also created a lot of distrust for the Kickstarter platform. Whether this is rightfully so is another issue entirely, but regardless, the impact of this game will take a long time for good projects to make up for. Do not keep quiet about your game. This is arguably worse than promising too much, though both are sure to get your company in a rough spot. At best, you will end up like Nintendo, whose recent lack of directs has left fans uninterested. It's worth noting that a dry spell in releases has also caused this, but there's no denying that the hype reserved for Nintendo Direct is now sullied. On the other hand, you may end up like Valve. Formerly adored by the PC gaming community, they've been heavily criticised for their stance on communications, or rather, lack of it. Particularly relevant is TF2's matchmaking update, where Valve failed to communicate at all after the backlash, and the terrible balance changes they made to the game had fans questioning whether the team even listened to their community. The CSGO community has similarly been victims of neglect, and a suspicious silence from Valve when things go awry. Over the years, Valve has gone from protagonist to antagonist due to their lack of communication, but questionable acts such as the paid mods debacle are also responsible for this. Thankfully, they have seemingly learnt from their mistake and are now communicating clearly to the fans of their games. But the communities are justifiably dubious of how long this will last. We've missed the worst case scenario, which is where people won't even understand your game. Here's a question: do you actually know what Battleborn is? An Overwatch-like MOBA-y thing? Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. All anybody knows about the game is that it was made by the creators of Borderlands 2. Oh, really useful. The marketing for the game was a mess, and even those who are somewhat interested in the game are finding it hard to work out what it actually is. Needless to say, pretty much nobody bought it, and the game is really starting to suffer as a result. If you do know what Battleborn is, then you must have been one of the 5 people who bought the game. My condolences. Funnily enough, No Man's Sky was both a result of oversharing and keeping quiet. Somehow, they managed to tell us a lot without actually explaining to us what the game was. As a result, we saw a plethora of articles entitled, "What do you actually do in No Man's Sky?" which were littered with Sean Murray quotes drawing our attention away from the game and towards its quintillions of planets. Turns out, it's a crafting game. Well, don't lie. That's pretty obvious though, so how can you avoid that? Start by only confirming features that you are certain of, but if you really have to share more, disclose that it's not yet implemented. That's really all it boils down to. There are ways of going one step beyond, and companies that have taken this approach clearly show the advantage of such conduct. Blizzard may not have always had the best history with its fans, what with the whole Diablo 3 auction house nonsense, but with Overwatch they're trying to make amends. They almost always explain changes they make to the game's balancing, justifying each and every tweak. This satiates fans who otherwise may be questioning of such changes. Similarly, their ARG for the new Sombra heroes gained its own ravenous fanbase. Digital Extremes, the creators of Warframe, started off with a modest game by a small team, but exploded in popularity due to how well they took player feedback. Implemented features and fixes suggested by its fans resulted in it becoming one of the biggest games on Steam. A high degree of transparency has also helped them, which they achieved through live streams of new updates, as well as their ability to quickly release patches to problems that players have. For your one-and-done games, you don't necessarily need to harbour a community, but any company jumping on the games-as-a-service bandwagon should look at proper communication. Even if it's just a base release with no additional content planned, you should make sure to handle communication genuinely and professionally. Ubisoft have managed to hype up games that don't actually exist, and they'll continue to do this whilst it still earns them powerful day one launches. However, their influence is waning. People have caught on to the tricks companies use years before a game's launch, and hopefully this signifies another step forward for transparency in games marketing.